Dad's wedding. Toast. Was my breaking point how I exposed his betrayal. Dad cheated on Mom while she was dying. Say a few words, son, he asked me during his wedding toast. I did, and I brought his whole little fairy tale down in flames. He called me a disgrace. So I raised my glass and told the truth. By the time I was done, his best man dropped his drink, and the bride screamed. The chaos started right there. My father called me ashamed for not toasting his new wife. I stood up, held out my glass, and said, "Here's to the woman who was sleeping with my dad while Mom was dying." His best man's champagne glass hit the floor. Veronica, the bride, shrieked. The priest left after what went down. The laughter, clinking glasses, and soft sounds of a live band filled the ballroom at the Fairmont Hotel in downtown Chicago. Everything about the scene screamed wealth. Golden candlesticks, white flowers, and perfectly folded napkins on plates that probably cost more than my rent. This wedding was so over the top it was almost offensive. I barely touched my food. My whiskey glass was half full as I sat at a table near the front. Stephanie, my sister, was beside me, nervously picking at her navy blue dress. "You okay?" she asked quietly. I exhaled, looking away. "Peachy," I said. Our dad, Richard Holloway, was grinning by the dance floor, as if he hadn't just destroyed our family. He had his arm around Veronica, the woman who had been his wife long before Mom passed. I tightened my grip on my glass. I didn't belong here. I hadn't planned on attending. When the gold embossed invitation arrived, I tossed it straight into the trash. No hesitation. But then I got a call from Stephanie. "Alex, please," she pleaded, voice cracking. "I know you hate him. I do too, but I can't do this alone." I squeezed the bridge of my nose. "You really want to sit through Dad marrying her?" "No," she said, "but if I have to suffer through it, I want you there with me." So I ended up in a stiff chair at a wedding I didn't want to be at, flying back to Chicago to watch my dad act like everything was fine with the woman who helped tear our family apart. The worst part? The guests were enjoying it. Richard was respected by everyone, a successful lawyer, a grieving widower who had moved on. They didn't know the truth. They didn't know that behind my mom's back, Dad and Veronica were already together while Mom was dying of cancer and barely able to lift her head. Stephanie spoke quietly beside me. "Are you drinking that or just staring at it?" I was still holding my whiskey glass, staring at it for a second before I took a slow drink. "Both," I said sourly. She chuckled, but her face stayed tense. "I don't know how you're holding it together," she said. "Who says I am?" I muttered. All night, I felt Dad's eyes on me. He didn't want me here. He wanted to paint a perfect picture of this new life, but I wasn't in the frame. Stephanie had convinced him to invite me, probably thinking I'd say no. He should have been thankful I was even there. I was about to order another drink when Dad did something that would destroy him. His glass clinked against the microphone and the room fell silent. With that fake smile, the one he used in courtrooms and country clubs, he cleared his throat. "First off, I want to thank everyone for being here tonight," he said. "This is a special day for me and Veronica. We're so lucky to have such incredible family and friends." Polite applause filled the room. I clenched my jaw. The last chapter of Mom's life wasn't even closed, and now he was eager to start this new one. "Of course," he continued, "I'd like to acknowledge my children, Stephanie and Alex." My stomach twisted. They've been through a lot, and I know how hard change can be. But Stephanie, sweetheart, you've been such a strong, beautiful soul through all of it. I couldn't be prouder of the woman you've become. Stephanie forced a smile, her teeth clenched. Then Dad turned to me. "And Alex," he said calmly. I just stared at him. "I know we've had our differences," he went on, "but family is family. In the spirit of unity, I'd love for you to say a few words." I froze. The room went silent, everyone waiting. Stephanie looked at me in shock. Dad gave me a hopeful smile. "Come on, son. Don't be a disgrace." That hit me hard. Suddenly, I lost it. I slowly got up, picked up my glass, and the room watched in silence. I took a deep breath. Then I said, "Here's to the woman who was sleeping with my dad while my mom was dying." The impact was instant. A gasp echoed through the room. The sound of a fork hitting a plate rang out. Peter, Dad's best man, dropped his champagne glass. Veronica's smile vanished. Then all hell broke loose. Veronica screamed, "What the, Alex?" Her voice cut through the silence. The room was whispering. "Did he just say that?" Dad's face turned dark. "Sit down." I stood still. "Really?" I laughed bitterly. "Because I remember Mom crying herself to sleep when you'd work late. I remember the whispers, the hotel, receipts, the perfume on your shirts that weren't hers. I remember everything," I added. Veronica balled her fists. "You're lying," she said. "Am I?" I shot back. "Last I checked, mistresses don't get wedding rings." Stephanie choked back a sob beside me. Dad shouted, "Enough! You won't ruin this night," I sneered. "Ruin it? You already did. You ruined us, and you don't even care." The tension was thick in the room. The priest stood up, took off his glasses, and sighed. "You know what? I'm done." He left the wedding. The whispers turned into full-blown conversations. Richard glared at me. "Get out!" I carefully set my glass down and stood. "Gladly," I said. As I walked out, the perfect image of my father's wedding crumbled. I left without looking back. My heart was racing as I walked through the hallway, past the mirrors and expensive flowers. I pushed open the heavy doors to the terrace with trembling hands. The cool Chicago night slapped me across the face. Leaning on the stone railing, I held on until my knuckles turned white. I took a deep breath. In the quiet outside, everything seemed peaceful. I had just destroyed my father's wedding after he called me ashamed. I sighed, audible in the cold night air. Should I feel bad? Relieved? I wasn't sure, but I was somewhere in between. "Alex!" I turned at the sound of Stephanie's voice. She came out after me, her shoes clicking on the stone. Her eyes were still red from tears, but her cheeks were flushed with emotion. "You okay?" I asked quietly. She let out a shaky laugh. "Am I okay? I should be asking you that." I wiped my face, turning away. "I don't know, Steph. I just couldn't let him get away with it." "You didn't," she said softly. "You really didn't." I glanced at her quickly. "Was I out of line?" She snorted. "Out of line? You just nuked Dad's wedding. Out of line doesn't even begin to cover it." I sighed. "Yeah," I muttered. She leaned against the railing beside me, arms folded. She tilted her head. "I probably wouldn't have done it like that, but I don't blame you. Not even a little." After a long silence, Stephanie whispered, "Mom would have wanted this, wouldn't she?" I swallowed hard. "Yeah," I muttered. "I think she would have." She nodded. I squeezed her hand gently. "Are they still in there?" She let out a shaky breath. "Oh yeah, they're whispering. Dad's trying to fix things, but it's bad. Veronica looks like she's about to combust, and the priest actually walked out." I couldn't help but laugh. Stephanie smiled. "Honestly, yeah." Suddenly, the door behind us creaked open. We both turned, and there was Dad. His jaw was clenched so tight, I thought his teeth might break. His face was tight with barely restrained rage. He'd unzipped his tuxedo jacket, fists clenched. "Stephanie," he said in a low voice, "go inside." She tensed. "No." He turned to me. I stepped forward, blocking his path. "She stays." His voice stayed steady, though his nostrils flared. "I don't want to do this here," he said. I sneered. "Now you care about this?" I said, pointing back toward the ballroom. "Pretty sure that ship sailed when you called me a disgrace in front of 200 people," I said, clenching my jaw. "You humiliated me." I laughed without humor, shaking my head. You embarrassed yourself, Dad. You could have just let me sit there in silence. But no, you had to drag me into it. You had to make me play along with your little fairy tale." His voice trailed off as he stepped closer. "You had no right to do what you did." Unflinching, I looked him in the eye. "And you had no right to do what you did." His gaze grew gloomy. "You don't understand." I abruptly interrupted him. Don't you dare try to justify it. I was there, Dad. I saw what it did to her. I saw Mom waste away in that hospital bed while you were off with her." Beside me, Stephanie took a short breath, but didn't say anything. Slowly, as though attempting to regain control, Richard let out his breath. "You don't know what my marriage with your mother was like," he started. My blood went cold. "Excuse me?" His face grew stern. "Alex, it wasn't flawless." He halted, shaking his head. "There were problems long before Veronica." I gaped at him in shock. My rage erupted. "You don't get to do that. You don't get to rewrite history just to make yourself feel better. She loved you. She trusted you. And you repaid her by cheating on her while she was dying." His lips clenched. I could tell he was unhappy. In fact, I laughed. "You were unhappy?" I asked, reaching out. "Do you have any idea how much pain Mom was in? How she clung to the hope that maybe you still loved her, and you were—" Richard's expression grew gloomy. "Watch it." "No," I yelled. "You watch yourself, because I am done letting you pretend you're some kind of victim here. You made a choice, Dad. You chose Veronica over Mom, over us." For the first time in my life, I noticed something that nearly looked like guilt on my father's face. However, it went by too soon. Instead, he smoothed a hand down his tuxedo and straightened. His voice was icy as he spoke again. "If you walk away from me now, you walk away for good," he stated coldly. "Is that what you want?" I gazed at him. It was this. He believed he could terrify me back into obedience at this point. He didn't understand, though. I had already lost my mother. I wasn't afraid of losing him at all. I squared my shoulders and looked him in the eyes with a certain assurance. "Yes, that's exactly what I want," I answered steadily. "If that's what it takes." Beside me, Stephanie quietly gasped, but didn't try to stop me. Richard's face remained unchanged. If anything, his face was hidden behind an unreadable mask as his jaw just tensed. "Then don't come crawling back when you regret it," he added. I shook my head and let out a breath. "I won't." After saying that, I turned and left. After a brief moment of hesitation, Stephanie followed. We never once turned around. With everything bearing down on us, Stephanie and I moved away from our father. The chilly air stung my skin. Even though my breath was shallow and my legs felt heavy, I continued to walk. My dad didn't give us a call. He made no attempt to stop me. Excellent. I didn't think he would. Richard Holloway wasn't the type to go after anything he gave up. Stephanie and I arrived at the hotel's side entrance, where some employees were smoking. They were too preoccupied with whatever drama was taking place inside the ballroom to even look at us as we passed. Stephanie wrapped her arms around herself and sniffed next to me. I said, "You okay?" in a softer tone. She shook her head and laughed dryly. "Am I okay, Alex? I don't even know what the hell just happened in there." She turned to face me and stopped walking. "Do you realize what you just did?" One hand swept through my hair. "Yeah, I do." She looked into my face. "And do you regret it?" I paused for just a moment. The truthful answer was, "No, not even a little." Stephanie nodded, letting out a trembling breath. "Yeah," she said quietly. "Me neither." The noises of distant traffic filled the silence between us as we stood there. Then, Stephanie laughed once more. A genuine laugh, a gasping, somewhat incredulous laugh. "Jesus Christ, Alex," the priest walked out. In spite of myself, I grinned. Yeah, that was something. She continued to smile as she shook her head. Then her face became serious. What do we do now? I let out a breath and gazed up at the night sky over Chicago. I don't know, I said, but I know I'm not going back there. Stephanie looked toward the hotel entrance and bit her lip. The air was still filled with the sounds of music and muted voices. She said, Should we just leave? I looked at her. Should we stay? After giving it some thought, she nodded. Fair point. The door behind us suddenly opened as we turned to go for the parking lot. Alex? We pivoted. Veronica was the one. As though she had nearly run after us, her wedding dress, a gorgeous, form-fitting gown with intricate lace trimming, had hiked up at the bottom. Her face was contorted with anger. Her makeup was flawless, and her blonde locks were now slightly frisked. Stephanie groaned softly. Oh, for God's sake. With her heels clicking fiercely against the pavement, Veronica charged in our direction. She pushed a manicured finger into my chest as she stopped. Harsing, you ruined my wedding. I cocked my head. Did I, or did you ruin your own life when you decided to screw a married man? Her eyes were blazing. You arrogant little... Careful, I said. Wouldn't want a guest to hear the blushing bride throwing a tantrum. She stomped her foot. Really? You think this is funny? You think humiliating us in front of everyone was some kind of win for you? I folded my arms. I think it was the truth. Something neither of you seemed to be familiar with. Her nose wrinkled. You selfish little... Beside me, Stephanie took a sharp inhale. Whoa! Veronica stepped forward. Your father gave you everything. He built a life for you. And this is how you repay him? I exhaled slowly and deliberately. You want to talk about repayment, Veronica? My mother spent 25 years loving a man who betrayed her while she was fighting for her life. And you... I motioned at her. You were part of it. You don't get to stand here in your stolen wedding dress and play the victim. She opened and shut her mouth, but nothing came out. Stephanie uttered a silent, damn. Veronica bounced back fast. Your father doesn't deserve this. He's been through enough. Something inside me snapped. He's been through enough? I said in a harder, more irate tone. Do you hear yourself? My mother died, and you think he was the one who suffered? Veronica's expression contorted. Margaret, don't say her name, I abruptly interrupted. She paused. I lowered my voice and stepped forward. You don't get to pretend you cared about her. You don't get to act like this wedding was some beautiful new beginning when we all know what it really is. Her jaw tightened as she swallowed forcefully. My voice was deadly calm as I said, You're just another chapter in a book of lies. She was speechless for the first time that evening. Claire folded her arms. Are we done here? A small line formed on Veronica's lips. Without saying another word, she pivoted on her heel and strode back in the direction of the hotel. Wow, mumbled Claire. That was dramatic. I breathed out slowly. Yeah, I'm exhausted. She gave me a look. Are you really okay? I paused. I don't know, I said, but I think I will be. She smirked after giving a slow nod. So, since we're already dressed up and out in the city, you want to go get some overpriced cocktails somewhere fancy and pretend we belong there? A tiny smile pulled at my mouth. That might be the best idea you've had all night. She put her arm around mine. Then let's get the hell out of here. After that, we left the ruins of my father's wedding behind and left the Fairmont Hotel. I felt free for the first time in a long time. As Stephanie and I strolled along the busy Chicago street, the bustle of the city surrounded us. I relished the bracing cold air since I needed any chance to get my mind clean. Stephanie put her arm through mine and asked, Are you really going to be okay? I breathed out slowly. I think so. She gave a shrug. Honestly, I thought I'd feel guilty. I thought I'd be panicking about how we just set Dad's life on fire. However, she trailed off before smiling. I feel amazing. I laughed with a sigh. Good. We finally arrived at a cocktail bar in River North, a classy lounge populated by